Yo, what's poppin', guys? Sizzle here, and today I'm bringing you the Control Collection tier list. Without further ado, let's get started. So first we have the AUG Surveillance, which is it's a very interesting skin at the end of the day. Unfortunately, it suffers from something weird they like to do with these collection skins, where despite being factory new at .06, it still has this massive amount of scratching on the front, which makes, the skin already a bit worse. But even then, it's kind of weird. Like, there's not many skins really like this one. I don't think there's anything really exactly like this. If you look at the back of it, I think that's supposed to be like a map of a city almost. It almost looks like those are like roads and like maybe these are buildings or houses. It's really hard to tell though because of the generally super dark color scheme. And it's one of those skins that doesn't get affected by lighting like whatsoever. Um, so at the end of the day, despite this probably having a super intricate and interesting design, it just ends up looking like something with a bad color of blue with a bunch of random orange scratches, just like someone clawed at it or something, which just doesn't look good. Pretty easy F tier for me. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Next up, we have the XM1014 Charter, which is already much better. But the name Charter, I feel like it's supposed to be kind of like the charting map that like pirates or other kind of ships would use. And it definitely gives that vibe. It has the right color scheme. A lot of the kind of random designs they have on here uh, kind of look like those kind of designs that you would see on an old school like pirate map or something. The same problem kind of applies though. It's a .05 wear, and it still has this massive scratch here. And the other problem is this is one of those incomplete skins. You can see this whole stock right here, the entire back part of the weapon, and even the handle are just the stock XM. I think if this design at least got applied to the back, this would already be an infinitely better skin. But in its current state, I can't really say this is that good. It's definitely at least a skin, it's a decent design. Better than F tier, but I can't realistically put this at a D tier. Next up, we have the MP9 Army Sheen. And if you guys have seen my Ancient Collection video, you'll know how I kind of feel about this skin. It is just your basic army camo, but with a sheen to it, which in my opinion is a bad thing because it makes it look like plastic, and you don't really be wanting around with plastic guns, or at least ones that are attempting to look realistic. Because realistic looking plastic guns are always kind of dumb. Maybe if this had like a weird color scheme, like like a light blue or yellow or something, and it had this sheen to it, it would be kind of passable for being plastic. But with an army camo being plastic, it just looks cheaply made and genuinely, my opinion, worse than the default version of the weapon. So for that, it's a pretty easy F tier. I'd say even worse than the AUG that we looked at. So next up, we have the P250 Forest Knight, and this is your basic camo, but a blue, dark blue kind of color instead. Which in my opinion, I like that color scheme more than the standard camo. So I'm going to put that just a little bit above everything so far. I think it's the best one we looked at so far, but it's definitely not a good skin by any stretch of the imagination. At least it doesn't have any noticeable scratching, and it actually covers the entire weapon, which I think is a first with this tier list so far. So just for that, I'm going to rank it a bit higher. And next up, we have the CZ Auto Jungle Dashed, which uses the same texture as the Scout from the Ancient Collection. It's very noticeable, it's the same pattern. The difference is, first up, it's barely scratched up, which normally is a plus, but in the case of this specific skin, the Jungle Dashed, it's supposed to kind of look like one of those ancient weapons that you just find while roaming around a temple or something. So looking like pristine already takes away from this skin, and just missing a lot of the other kind of features that the Scout had, like the dent in the scope and a bunch of other like things. Just the general look of it. It doesn't fit that kind of ancient weapon found in the jungle very well. It just looks like a generic camo skin, but debatably even worse than that. So I think this is a pretty easy F tier for me. Probably still better than these two because they're just a whole new level of bad. But it's this is just isn't a good skin. I can't, in good faith, recommend anyone get it. Next up, we have the dual Berettas switchboard, which I think is supposed to look like a motherboard. I mean, it has some like aspects that would suggest it's supposed to, But at the end of the day, this just looks like your standard camo skin, which there's a lot of in CS. But at least it is like stupidly bright. It uses really, really bright colors of green, which is a big plus for this. But otherwise, it's pretty much your standard camo skin. So I'm just gonna put it probably right below the knight. I think the forest knight looks a little bit nicer in this thing. But these aren't, horrible. If you want a skin that stands out, this is gonna be very noticeable for people. They're gonna be like, oh, that guy's a skin on his weapon, which I guess that's all you really want. Then these are okay, but otherwise, they're not really that good. Next up, we have the Desert Eagle, the Bronze, which has some kind of sheen to it. Nothing really crazy or noticeable. And otherwise, it's basically a camo skin, but instead of being used in a forest, it's a camo skin for a desert, so it has the more desert-like colors, which makes it a bit more bright, so it's a little bit better yet again than stock camo, for the same reason the dualies are. But not having one kind of overarching color like the dualies, which were pretty much all like a light green. This one has like the kind of orange of some sand combined with the tan of most of the sand. It doesn't go too well together, but it's definitely better than most of the stuff in the F tier. And at least it is a full weapon skin, so I'm going to put it above the Charter for just having a full camo applied to the entire weapon. But it's just not better than the dualies, which already weren't that great to begin with. Yeah. And next up we have the Mag 7 Carbon Fiber, which uses yet again skin used on the Scout, and it looks just as clean on here. It's a nice. It still has kind of the overarching black design of the stock Mag 7, but this kind of pattern for some reason kind of looks really nice. Although having still this whole front part here and these two little like uh, parallelogons, I think they're called. I forgot what these are called. I haven't looked at them in a while. Um, Definitely takes away from the skin. If the rest of the skin had this kind of pattern to it, it would be kind of clean, in my opinion. Despite this being a .02 float as well, this has tons of scratches all the way down here, in the back, over here, at the top of the weapon. So being super scratched up and just having a mediocre design, I can't realistically put this too high anywhere, but I can at least put in the C tier. I think it's probably the best one we've looked at so far. Despite basically just being a slight improvement to stock. Yeah. So next up we have the MP5 SD Nitro, which is our final industrial grade skin, and it's just clean. I mean, it's what you expect from a Nitro, the stock weapon, but without any scratches, and then just some orange applied to some part of the gun. Nothing fancy, nothing really that good looking. But it doesn't look bad by any stretch of the imagination. There's not like a single scratch on this weapon, and it's not even a good wear factory new. It's pretty much the lowest like possible wear rating effect new, but it still just looks really clean. Um, can't really go wrong with this, but I can't really say it's all that great either. But it's a solid skin. I'll put it top of C, probably bottom of B tier. I might move it up later, considering how bad most of the other skins in this collection are. It might end up actually being a highlight despite just being super basic. Next up, we have the Scar 20 Magna Carta, which has this cool kind of purple thing going on, but despite having a wear a .05, there are very noticeable scratches all over this thing. And the texture on the main gun, especially up on the front here, just looks almost stretched. Like if you stretch a picture's resolution to be bigger than it originally was, it just doesn't look good. There's not much good looking about this, and it's super like messed up. And this weird design doesn't even look that good anyway. I don't think it'd even look that good if it wasn't super stretched, but just being stretched and having all this wear on it just doesn't do well for this weapon. I think it's worse than everything in D, but it's definitely nowhere near as bad as the rest of the things in F, but I think it is an F tier skin. I don't like this thing at all. Alright. Next up, we have the Scout Threat Detected, which yet again has that problem with having a ton of wear on it, despite a really nice float, .06. I guess it's like the lowest, .069 is a pretty bad float for fact new, but this much scratching for that high of a float, especially in the back here. I mean, that's pretty much just ripped off the back part of the camo. And just having a mediocre design overall. I mean, it uses the same kind of pattern that we saw on the AUG, but at least it's applied to the full skin here. The white scope is very nice. You can't really go wrong with that, although being scratched up is a minus. And having a base orange skin is just clean. I mean, that's the reason the nitro is like a pretty solid skin. And the white scope works pretty nice. Despite it being scratched up, the base skin is actually pretty solid. I'd say it's a little bit worse than the cleanness of the nitro without being super scratched up, but it's still pretty solid skin. So I'll put it in a pretty easy C tier position. Next up, we have the M4A4 Global Offensive, which looks like almost a winter camo skin. I don't know why everything in this collection is basically just a camo skin, but it doesn't look really that great. It kind of looks like the camo that you would see if someone was up on like a snowy mountain or something, because this blue and white and gray, for whatever reason, is the camo used for stuff like that. And otherwise, it's nothing. It's probably one of the worst M4 skins out there. It's a very basic camo skin. That's really all there is to it. At least the color scheme's a bit unique, so I'll give it that, and probably put it under the night. But it's not a good skin by any stretch of the imagination. And then we have the P2000 Dispatch, which is just some random stuff. I mean, the back of this thing actually looks kind of cool with whatever this is supposed to be. It's something. I don't know what you'd call this kind of creature, but it's got something on the back, which is cool, I guess. But the rest of the skin is it's just a bunch of random colors and random places, and it has a ton of wear despite being fact new. 0.06 has a ton of wear right there and along the whole weapon, and the pattern doesn't really look too nice either. Not sure what they were going for, but I don't think they did too well. I'm gonna put it just right above the Charter for at least being a complete skin, and it doesn't look completely horrible. But I'd actually prefer camo skins to this, whatever this is. Yeah. Next up, we have the UMP45 crime scene, and we go from a bunch of camo skins to something that is just beautiful. I mean, this is fact new, right? I'll give it that. So 0.06, but there's not a single scratch I can really notice on here, and the color scheme is really nice. The crime scene obviously suggesting it's supposed to be kind of like a police type of weapon, and the blue and red lights and kind of I guess the purple suggests like kind of police sirens going off at night. It's got that exact type of color scheme, and this little this tape going across the middle saying "crime scene, do not cross" just looks really clean, and everything on this weapon just looks clean as fuck. It's a really solid skin, which is surprising considering how bad everything we've looked at so far has been. But it's a really good looking skin. I'd say it's definitely a highlight of this collection. Easy A tier, if not S tier, kind of depending on how good the rest of the skins are. And we have the FAMAS Prime Conspiracy, which yet again has that weird trend of FAMAS skins being super scratched up. This is a .05 float, and there's a bunch of scratch on the back, all along the bottom, and everywhere else. And it just has some kind of random looking red and blue pattern, which red and blue, I'll give it that, that's nice, but being this scratched up and just not really having a notably good pattern just brings it down for me. I think it's a bit better than the basically stock Mag 7, but definitely worse than these ones with a solid orange base. Even though the Scout was a bit scratched up, it's nowhere near as bad as this one. Then we have the 5-7 Berries and Cherries, which for me just looks like almost a cleaner like case harden. It's like the Fire and Ice Doppler, whatever. And yet again, despite being a very good wear, .04, it's got like one tiny scratch, but it's nowhere near as bad as a lot of the things we've seen. And it's got that kind of nice case hardened finish that you're looking for, and this red and blue kind of looks like almost like a berry and cherry like ice cream or something that like a snow cone, and it just looks clean. You can't. I mean, this still has a lot of the stock weapon, but with the way the case harden kind of works, that's a good thing actually, and it kind of draws your attention at the top of the weapon, which then has this really nice blue and red pattern at the top. So I'm gonna say this one's definitely a highlight of this collection. One of the better looking skins. It's just very clean and nice, but it's not as good as the crime scene. I think the crime scene was a lot better, more better crafted, and just looked nicer overall. It was a very clean skin, and I mean this one still looks great, but it's nowhere near as good as the crime scene in my opinion. I think it's a little bit worse than that one, but still definitely highlight for this collection. Next up, we have the USPS Target Acquired, which yet again, for the third time, we're seeing that exact skin used by the AUG all the way in the gray tier. And just like that AUG, it has a weird amount of wear. This is a 0.05 float, and you can see right before the suppressor, there's a bunch of wear. At the top here, there's some wear on the bottom, and even in the back, it's got a lot of weird amount of wear to it, especially back here. I don't know what happened here. So for being at 0.05, better than the factory new whiteout, it has a stupid amount of wear to it, even on the front of the suppressor. And the base design isn't phenomenal. I mean, the base color of this kind of like pinkish red is great. I'll give it that. And the light blue goes very well with that pink, even though it basically looks like random patterns. Um, so it's still okay, but just having all that wear definitely brings it down a bunch for me. I still say it's better than most other things in this collection, so it's a B tier, but it's nowhere near as good as the UMP or the 5.7 that we've looked at. So, yeah, I think that's a pretty good rating for it. And then we have the M4A1S Blue Phosphor, which, holy shit, this is like kind of like the Emerald on, for like the Gamma Doppler, but blue. This is a .02 float, still has some scratches on the front, but the rest of this weapon looks so clean that it's kind of easy to pass that up. Definite S tier. It's just a really, really clean blue skin, works very well with lighting, and just looks beautiful. I don't know how you could really dislike this skin. It's just very simple and very nice. Yeah, there's probably a reason that it's so expensive. So, yeah, that's just gonna toss this all the way up in S tier. It's a phenomenal skin. Can't really go wrong with it. And our final skin for this collection, and the definite highlight for this collection, is the AWP Fade. Now, this one doesn't have any yellow for some reason, but do know it works like most other Fade skins where it goes yellow, pink, purple. This one's just like pink and purple for some reason, which I guess some people might like more. But if you've watched any of my other tier lists, you'll know I really like the Fade. The Fade just looks clean. I mainly like it with the yellow. I think having all three colors looks nicer than whatever this is. It's kind of paints a bad image for the skin. But you'll see, like, even in like the thumbnail or something, you'll see a much better looking version of the skin and what it normally looks like. And it normally looks absolutely fire, even with no painted scope or anything. At least the scope is super clean. There's no scratch or anything, and it kind of draws your attention to the fate of this weapon. It's not my favorite AWP skin of all time, but it's a very, very good AWP skin. You can't really go wrong with putting the fade on anything. Pretty much any fade skin is good. But I think it actually looks worse than the blue phosphor. I really love that kind of blue emerald type finish that it has going on. I think it looks really nice. And yeah, with that being said, that's it for this tier list video, and I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.